The UCLA Bruins beat the Nebraska Cornhuskers 27-20. And UCLA didn't just beat Nebraska, they game controlled Nebraska in their own house in Memorial Stadium, nonetheless, several time zones away. UCLA had a yardage advantage in this matchup, 358 total yards to Nebraska's 322. Matt Rule and his staff talk about being physical, wanting to play in the Big Ten, wanting to run the football and impose their will on teams, like Nebraska traditionally has. One problem: UCLA's rushing offense, and I talked about this in the preview, is one of the least productive in the country, and they put up 139 rushing yards, averaging 4.6 yards per carry. Much of that was on a 57-yard run, really a scramble outside of pressure to escape pressure by Ethan Garbers, which helped extend a UCLA drive and put points on the board. But still, Nebraska only ran for 3 yards per carry and 113 yards. UCLA had no turnovers and converted nearly 50% of their third down attempts. Nebraska converted just over 50% of their third down attempts, but were 1 of 3 on fourth down, and they had 2 turnovers, one of which was a pick six that, well, in hindsight, decided the football game. So all the talk about Marcus Satterfield, I'm not going to discuss too much of that today, but yeah, he needs to go. There needs to be staff adjustments. Matt Rule needs to make changes, and I will tell you right here, right now, that this loss is worse than the Indiana loss. It is. And the epitome of that, for example, is the fact that I was watching Indiana versus Michigan State on one of my TVs. Same with Oregon versus Michigan, because if Michigan beat Oregon and somehow won out, which wasn't going to happen, but let's say it did, they could be in the playoff. Oregon's undefeated and the best team in the country. Michigan State is in year 1, and Jonathan Smith is taking over a program that was torn to the ground, that's foundation was ripped out of the ground by Mel Tucker. And they're fighting for bowl eligibility. And they just beat Iowa by double digits a few weeks ago. Like, they have some moxie. They have some upside. They have some finesse, some physicality to them. And they were playing an Indiana team that could be the best team in the country, that could be better than Oregon. And maybe we'll see them match up in Indianapolis if Indiana beats Ohio State. Nebraska versus UCLA was relegated to my phone. It was a game that was important enough for me to watch it and pay attention to it, but even if Nebraska wins out, they're not reaching the playoff, and UCLA has 5 losses. And yet, UCLA led this game really from start to finish, and at one point the score was 27-7. This was humiliating. This was supposed to be an automatic win, and instead, looking back on this game and how it was played, if these teams matched up tomorrow, would you pick Nebraska? Because I certainly wouldn't, and I'm going to get into why that is, some takeaways for the Cornhuskers, and also some takeaways for UCLA, who their hopes and dreams of going bowling this year, of avoiding disaster under year 1 of the Deshaun Foster era, those hopes and dreams are real now. They are, and we'll talk about that too. But before we do, I just ask that you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit that notification bell so that you can get notified when we release new content here on College Football with Sam, and also when we do our end of the regular season giveaway to celebrate passing 20,000 subscribers. Many of you probably think you are subscribed, but maybe you aren't, so please just double check and make sure that you are subscribed to College Football with Sam. Thanks to you, we are the best Big Ten football channel on YouTube, and we are trying to be the best college football channel on YouTube, and only you can help us do that. So also give this video a like to give us a boost in the algorithm. Share this video around to other college football fans who love and enjoy the sport and therefore will love this content. Comment your reaction to this game down below. I imagine if you're a UCLA fan, you are elated as you should be. If you're a Nebraska fan, you're thinking to yourself, are we about to go 0-4 in the month of November again? Like we did last season? Just vent your frustration or share your joy with me down in the comments section below, whether you're a UCLA fan, a Nebraska fan, or no matter what fan you are. If you just paid attention to this game and want to give a comment about it, I'm open to hearing it. And also, please join our Discord server via the link in the description or down below in the pinned comment, where we talk college football 24/7. And if you want to support this channel monetarily, the link to the Patreon page and the merchandise store are in the description and down below in the pinned comment. Same with the Discord server. But I mean, let's dive in here because this game was it was embarrassing for Nebraska all around. UCLA averaged 6.4 yards per play. They had a 0.219 points per play margin. Nebraska had a 0.219, negative 0.219 points per play margin, and they only averaged 4.2 yards per play. That is disgusting. That's rancid. UCLA, keep in mind, they're not a bad team. It's something that I thought they were at the beginning of the year, but games against Minnesota, the Rutgers win, and with hindsight, the Penn State game and a bit of the Oregon and LSU game, after that loss to Indiana at home, they kind of woke up. And maybe they woke up against Indiana, and Indiana's just that good because Indiana is hanging 40 points or at the very worst 30 points on everyone. They're murdering everyone, Indiana is. And I'm going to talk about them probably multiple times a week for the rest of the season, and also in the playoff when they make the playoff, because I think they're basically a playoff lock. They're not losing to Purdue, not losing to Michigan, I don't think. And I'll talk about that tomorrow. But anyway, for today, UCLA got destroyed by Oregon, by Penn State. They lost to a Minnesota team who was struggling weeks ago. They got destroyed by Indiana. They were competing with LSU a fair amount, but LSU eventually pulled away right out of the gate, just like what they did against Rutgers. They marched down the field. They took the lead, and they said that you are not going to bully us. You are not going to kill us, and we're not just going to be the Big Ten sacrificial lamb. And good for them. I mean, again, they outrushed Nebraska. They had more yards per carry than Nebraska did. Dylan Raiola had a QBR of a 10.9. This is another game in a row where Dylan Raiola has had a QBR of worse than 70. Fourth game in a row. Well, no. He had a 73.2 QBR against Ohio State, which I almost find surprising due to the fact that he had no passing touchdowns, a pick. He had that one long rush, yes, but he didn't even average 5 yards per pass attempt. He's not had a good season. 10 touchdowns, 8 picks, 1,921 passing yards, a 57.4 QBR, which is 70th nationally. It feels like this Nebraska team's falling apart, guys. It really, really feels that way. And when you look at 2 turnovers, 10 of 20 on combined third and fourth down, which 50%, it's a good percentage. But when you have that many third down and fourth down attempts, that's where something's wrong. Either you run a very methodical offense where the margin of error is 0 because you don't gain a ton of yards per play. You don't have a lot of explosive plays. Oh, by the way, Nebraska had some explosive plays. They just had that many 3 and outs, that many awkward drives, I guess is the best way to phrase it. And Nebraska in this matchup was not even that highly penalized. They had 2 penalties for 15 yards. I'm almost saying to myself, am I reading this right? But yes, two penalties for 15 yards. UCLA gifted Nebraska 62 yards in penalties on 9 penalties, and yet they were down 27-7 at home. Nebraska has one of the proudest fan bases in the country. I think it's the kindest fan base in the country, the best fan base in the country. It's one of the most active fan bases in the country for sure. And it's a shame that not a lot of people talk about Nebraska, I think. It's a shame that many people think that Nebraska will never seriously contend again because they have the resources to. But these games are the reasons why people think certain ways and think certain things when Nebraska is brought up in conversation as a football program. I mean, this team, you lost to UCLA at home. That's humiliating. As I said a few minutes ago, this is a worse loss than the loss a few weeks ago on the road in Bloomington at Indiana. This is worse than 56-7 because Indiana's 9-0. They're 6-0 in conference play. After being down 10 points to Michigan State, they put up 47 unanswered. And the only reason Michigan State was ahead was because Curtis Rourke had to get back in rhythm after a thumb surgery and being out for a week for really 6 quarters of football. And also because Aiden Childs and Nick Marsh are elite players when they're playing at their ceiling. Michigan State had to play a quarter of perfect football to just put up 10 points in Indiana. And then at that point, dead. Dead. Indiana's good. And while it's unacceptable at a program like Nebraska in year 2 to get to lose that way, to get 50-pieced by any team, by the Hoosiers, this loss here, this is bad. And on Corn Crazed, when I went live with him Thursday night, and I don't know exactly when it was the 24th, little over a week and a half ago about. We were talking, he said at one point, because I was talking about how bad the Indiana loss was, he's like, Sam, we don't do doom and gloom on this channel. And I was thankful for him correcting me on that, because at that point, the season wasn't over. And the season isn't over now. But doom and gloom right now is even more justified than it was then. And that loss was bad. This is a catastrophe. The Cornhuskers allowed 360 yards, 27 points, 219 passing yards. UCLA averaged almost 9 yards per pass attempt, almost 5 yards per carry. And Nebraska allowed 4 sacks and 7 TFLs. I mean, this was the same unit that was out physicaling, that in a physical sense bullied Ohio State in the trenches. And then they turn around and they get bullied by UCLA. And that whole 3-game stretch is bookended not just by the bullying by UCLA, but the bullying by Indiana. And this also shows how confusing the Big Ten is. Like, no team in the Big Ten outside of maybe Oregon right now and maybe Indiana are perfect. Ohio State has some serious flaws. Penn State has more serious flaws. Everyone but Indiana and Oregon are doubly or triply or quadruply flawed, if those are even proper words, as the Buckeyes and Nittany Lions are. And Indiana hasn't really played anybody. Their strength of schedule is still outside the top 100, and Oregon had issues earlier in the year. This is a down year in football. And Nebraska, for all the improvements that I and many of you thought they made in the 2024 preseason, for all the momentum and goodwill that we thought they built, it's largely gone now. It's dead. It's almost dead. It's on life support. If Nebraska goes down to the Coliseum, to a USC team that is like 2021 Nebraska, where at this point Lincoln Riley kind of looks like Scott Frost, can't get out of his own way, can't build a good culture, can't win a close game to save his life. If they go down and they get destroyed by that team, which is possible with some of the players they have, then the plug may as well already be pulled. Not on Matt Rule. I don't think Matt Rule's on the hot seat. I don't think he should be. Marcus Satterfield, Ed Foley, with the missed extra point from Hole, and some other assistant coaches and even some players, because got to make tough decisions. There's pressure there. But it's year 2. We knew that Nebraska this year was not going to be an elite team or a near elite team, but this is bad. This is unacceptable. I listened to Adam Carricker. I listened to John Johnston. I listened to Connor Hayden. I watched all of their reactions. They are in pain. They are in deep, deep pain. And I feel like some of them don't want to sow more division in the fan base than there already is. And some may be holding back what they feel like are like rightful criticisms of Matt Rule and of Nebraska, because it hurts. I'm not a Nebraska fan, and even if I was, I think it's my duty of the channel to air my thoughts. And what I was saying about them wasn't a criticism of them, actually. It's that it gets tiring harping year over year over year, game after game after game, on the fact that your team is not doing things properly. It's horrible. I'm close to doing that with what Michigan is doing right now, and Michigan is not as bad as Nebraska. A month ago, I would have said Nebraska's way better than Michigan, but in these past few weeks, comparing the two teams, they're pretty similar. Michigan may actually be better, and power ratings would say they are, surprisingly enough. Rules game management. This staff and their game plans, the coaching is atrocious right now. It's not where it needs to be. In the first half, Nebraska's drives consisted of 12 passing attempts and 8 rushing attempts. There were drives where Nebraska went pass, 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 all incompletions, or 0 yards to Fedoni, incompletion, punt. No time taken off. UCLA has all the momentum, and, well, you can already paint the picture for yourself. And then going for it on 4th and 5 with 11:31 left, when your defense is stepping up, when you have a reliable kicker in John Hull, and if Hull doesn't miss the extra point on the following touchdown, you kick the field goal there, 27-17, march down, get a touchdown, it's 27-24 if Hull doesn't miss the extra point. And then on the final drive, whether Raiola gets injured in this hypothetical scenario or not, you can drive down and kick the game-tying field goal, and you have all the momentum. That 4th and 5, that came across to me as desperation, and that's not a good sign. That's not a good sign whatsoever. And it was just, it was stunning. It was stunning to watch. The play calling, the execution, the fact that UCLA in the trenches was gaining leverage wherever they wanted to, outside, inside, whether Nebraska blitzed or not. It was stunning to watch. And this was an important game. And I said in my preview, I think Nebraska's going to win. I picked them to win 27-17. And I just didn't think Nebraska would blow out UCLA because UCLA was playing teams tough. I likened this game a little bit to UCLA traveling to Rutgers, except I think that, well, because that head-to-head win and how bad Rutgers has looked in recent weeks, that Nebraska's better than Rutgers, but I don't know if they are. Nebraska may have just beaten Rutgers because of home field advantage. That may be the reason why. Maybe if that game was played in Piscataway, Nebraska loses, and they're 4-5, 1-5 in conference right now. So I'm just at a loss for words. That's really where I am with Nebraska right now. That's really where I am. And that's where a lot of Nebraska fans and channels are. And as I mentioned, I feel like we're all holding back a little bit. Myself, Connor Hayden, Adam Carricker, John Johnston. Not John Johnston. John Johnston's not holding back. As his famous saying goes, which I won't repeat because I'm not all that profane, I'm paraphrasing here, obviously, screw everything, go Big Red. It's basically where he's at. And again, I'm not a Nebraska fan, but as an objective analyst, I can empathize with the pain of Nebraska fans. And changes have to be made. And you're right to be angry. This is a loss that should make you angry. If UCLA came into Michigan Stadium and depantsed Michigan like what they did in Nebraska, and by depantsed, I don't mean in the blowout sense. I meant in the sense that they controlled the game, and you had to hope. You had to hope that your team would come back on their own home field, that the crowd would rally together, and it would all just be enough to squeak out with the win. If that happened in Michigan Stadium, I would be furious as a Michigan fan, and I would be calling for someone's head. So I think that what Nebraska fans are asking right now is not too much. It's not too much one bit. And there needs to be a higher expectation than this. It's not good enough to just say we're on the right track. You have to show that you're on the right track. It's like what Ohio State has been saying. Actions speak louder than words after that loss to Oregon. And against Nebraska, they didn't really back it up. Against Penn State, they did. And they just have to win and win and win and win and win. This is what Nebraska has to do. No more talk, just win. And with the remainder of their schedule, they're underdogs to everyone right now per FPI. They're underdogs to USC, big time per FPI, slight underdogs to Wisconsin, and also big time underdogs to Iowa. Iowa right now, with Brennan Sullivan at quarterback, is a dangerous team. I think they would probably beat every team outside of the top 5 teams in the country if they hosted against everyone nationally. Their offense, their rushing offense, is elite. Their defense, near elite, great. And Sullivan's a better passer than McNamara is, or at least as good, but with the mobility, that opens up a whole new aspect to that game. And Kinnick Stadium's a hornet's nest. Their special teams are good. They're disciplined. They don't beat themselves. USC beats themselves. But USC hasn't gotten blown out by anybody. Not by Penn State. They barely lost to Michigan. They barely lost to Washington. It's a lot of close losses. It resembles 2021 Nebraska. And that's just going to be interesting after this bye week for Nebraska. Does 2024 Nebraska win with all of their ineptitude? Or does 2021 Nebraska, a.k.a. 2024 USC, win with all of their ineptitude? Nebraska will not beat all of these teams. They won't. At this point, it's safe to say that they can't. I think Iowa is the most likely loss, followed by USC on the road. Wisconsin at home is the most likely win. They have to get 6 wins. They have to. To go 0-4 in the month of November again is a shanking of this program that I don't know if it's occurred before, because it'd be happening again in the same spot where the scar is. Like, Mike Riley has imploded this program before. Scott Frost has imploded this program before. Nebraska's had an open wound in their stomach, a gashing that they've attempted to seal over and over and over again. And 5-7 after last year and the late collapse, I feel like that would reopen the wound again. And the only way to seal it up, or to temporarily seal it up, because we don't know if Matt Rule's the guy, I feel like he's still going to have success at Nebraska. But I have a lot of questions. So that's where I'm at here. They could finish 7-5. They could beat 2 of these teams. They have the talent. I still think they have enough of coaching, and they have enough fight, and they have enough physicality too. That's the main portion of any potential success Nebraska can offer. But they could also go 5-7. They could lose to USC. They could lose to Wisconsin, and they could lose to Iowa. They're not winning out. They could lose out. And at this point, I think just get one more win and go bowling, because even though I think that would be a disappointing season, that would at least be some type of improvement over last year. And improvement and going to the first bowl game since 2016, I think should be welcomed and would be welcomed by the fan base. Now for UCLA. UCLA's game plan, I thought, was fantastic. They ran everything through Garbers, who was 17 of 25 for 219 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and they had 30 attempts on the ground. Many of them were from Garbers, 139 rushing yards, 4.6 yards per carry. Great game plan. Great game plan by UCLA and by offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy. Their wide receivers were gaining leverage and were beating Nebraska's secondary. And UCLA was able to run the football on the outside, on the inside. They were calling screens. They were calling deep shots. Garbers did a good job of adjusting. He had a 94.4 quarterback efficiency rating on the day. And his previous performance against Rutgers, he had a 96.6 QBR. Right now, Garbers, because in large part of those 2 performances, has a 71.9 QBR. 10 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 1,703 passing yards. Just an absolutely phenomenal 2-game stretch by Ethan Garbers. 6 total touchdowns, completing over 70% of his passes. He's had 63 pass attempts for over 600 yards. It's crazy how good of football he's playing right now since the middle of October up until this day. And if he can play that way going forward, UCLA can develop game plans like this moving forward. They can go bowling. They can. And this is a question that I ask, mainly for Nebraska fans. What would Matt Rule and Marcus Satterfield and Tony White do with UCLA's situation, because the situation that Deshaun Foster took over was talent-wise worse than what Rule took over from Frost in the 2023 preseason. It literally was. What would Rule and Satterfield and White and Foley do with UCLA's talent? Would they have 2 back-to-back conference wins, or would they not? What do you think? That's the question right there. And I say that to say there's things that Nebraska has to correct over this bye week. I think that right now with Marcus Satterfield, it's time to hit the trapdoor button. It's time to send him into outer space, because what UCLA has done over the past 2 games is produce quarterback play that we have not seen from Dylan Raiola all season long for consistent 4 quarters. It's just the truth. It's the facts. And UCLA was able to beat Nebraska's defense, and Eric Bieniemy was able to outcoach Tony White for multiple quarters, and that shouldn't happen. Shouldn't happen under any circumstances. For UCLA, though, they're overachieving, in my view. I thought to myself, just survive through this year, make sure the team never quits. They haven't quit. They haven't come even close. And getting to a bowl game shouldn't even be the goal. Like, it can be a goal, and you should be very happy if you make a bowl game. But if you don't, be content with the fact that you survived, you're building something, steal a win that you were an underdog in, which UCLA has now done twice, to Rutgers and to Nebraska, and begin building something under Deshaun Foster. And I wonder if they'll do that. We'll have to see. Again, he's in year 1. He had no prior coordinator experience, no prior head coaching experience, but his players play for him, and UCLA's been getting better each and every week of the season, while Nebraska has been declining. They clamped down on Nebraska's offense, too. UCLA's defense played a good game, especially up front, where they were harassing Dylan Raiola. Dylan Raiola got sacked 3 times against UCLA. Same amount of sacks that he received from Ohio State's defensive front. UCLA had 7 TFLs, 7 of them. They had 7 passes defended. They had a pick 6 by Kane Madrano. It was just an incredible game plan overall by UCLA. Clamping down Nebraska's offense, working the defense. Nebraska ended the day with about a 1 minute, 30-second possession advantage. Just about. And the reason they did that is because in the 4th quarter, they scored a touchdown. They had a 6-minute drive there. They had some other drives early and late in the 4th quarter that turned out to finish with turnovers, a turnover on downs, and an interception where ball bounced off of the receiver's knees and UCLA picked off the ball. I thought it was a good throw by Heinrich Harburg, just not perfect, and the receiver wasn't perfect either. And then there was some luck involved to help UCLA not give Nebraska another chance on a drive where they were having some limited success. So that's really what this game boils down to here, is UCLA had the better game plan, and they wanted this game more, and they weren't as desperate as Nebraska was. Think about it this way. 3rd and 1 against one of the better defensive lines, better defensive fronts in the country. Maybe you can get cute. Maybe you're scared as UCLA, and you're desperate, and you don't trust your defense, and you get cute, and you pass, and you roll out with Garbers, and you take a sack, and it's a fumble recovered by Nebraska, or he gets anxious on the rollout and throws a pick, or it's an incomplete pass, giving Nebraska more time. No, just run it with Jalen Berger up the middle. Yes, they get stopped and have to punt, but they trust themselves. It feels like Nebraska's locker room, coaches, fans, everyone don't trust themselves. And hey, something that I haven't done a good job of is making sure to not trust Nebraska. Many Nebraska fans know I picked them to go 10-2 in 2022. Well, that aged like milk. I picked them to go bowling last year. Again, aged like milk. And in this season, I picked them to beat Illinois. Was wrong there. I picked them to beat UCLA. Was wrong there. And while I picked Indiana to win by double digits, I didn't think they'd blow them out. Although now if I were to pick a rematch, I certainly would. It's time as Nebraska fans, as college football fans, as Big Ten football fans, and as college football analysts to stop giving this team faith, because our faith in them will not help them win, nor will it help them lose. What they are doing right now is so outside of the expected realm of possibility in terms of probability, with how many close games they lose, that we're not going to impact it. We're not going to. UCLA impacted it. The teams that Nebraska plays impacts that. And Nebraska's own ineptitude impacts that. This was a disastrous loss for Nebraska and a massive win for the Bruins, who, by the way, can go bowling. The remaining opponents are Iowa, who they host this Friday night, Washington, they host USC, and they travel. No, I don't think they travel. I think they host Fresno State. They can beat Fresno State. They can beat USC. They can beat Washington. They can do those things. And they can beat Iowa, because Iowa has to travel to their place. Friday night's going to be kind of a sleepy game after a big Iowa win. They can reach 6-6 and go bowling, believe me. And that leads me to my final point about quarterback Ethan Garbers. He's my game MVP, 17 of 25 for 219 yards, 56 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, 94.4 QBR, easily player of the game, helped UCLA earn multiple scoring opportunities, basically had a perfect game through the air in my mind and a perfect game all around, showed pocket presence, mobility, a willingness to put the team on his back in key situations. He's a good quarterback, and he's quickly rising through the rankings right now in college football. Thank you all so much for watching this video. Remember to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and comment your thoughts down below. Thanks to Crash2488, Brasco Rascal, and Tyler OH for being Heisman members. Thanks to Chris Lane, Ismar, and Tyler and I for being All-American members. And thanks to John Lynn, Roaming Gnome, Matthew Sale, Austin Christmas, Joshua Jorgensen, and Will Loftus for being all conference members. Have a great day, guys. Make sure to check out my merchandise store, Patreon page, and Discord server via the link in the description down below in the pinned comment. Have a great day, everyone. Go Bruins and go Cornhuskers.